Welcome to a very special 300th episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. I am your, dare I say, longtime host, Raymond Hadfield, and today, well, I want to celebrate you. You know, this podcast, now 300 episodes in, is in its 6th year, which is crazy to me because, I mean, that is older than my daughter who, well, she's about to finish up her first year of kindergarten. But, wow. But throughout, all of those 6 years, I think we've had some amazing times together, and I've seen many of you graduate from that beginner moniker. You came in wide-eyed, excited, greenhorns, and at times it was tough. It wasn't easy. You pushed through, and now, not only do you know how to use your camera, but you love the process of photography so much more than you thought. And that, to me, is the goal for every one of you listening right now, to help you better understand your camera, help you better understand light, help you better understand editing, all the things related to photography so that you can know what it's like to have confidence behind the camera, so that you can know what it's like to have an idea for a photo and then just simply execute on it with a high level of certainty. That is why you tune in each week for 300 episodes of the podcast, for all of the amazing photography guests that we have, in the hopes that, you'll pick up that one golden nugget, that one thing that could just turn it all around for you and make it click. So today, I'm going to do you one better. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to do you dozens better by directly answering your photography questions, because without you, I don't know if this podcast would still be here. So this is my way of trying to give back. So over the past few weeks, you have been sending me your questions from Facebook, email, and today you will get your answers. Sound good? Good. All right. Oh, you know what? But first, I actually have some exciting news about the future of the podcast. Yes, the future of the podcast. So stick around until after the questions to find out what it is that I'm doing to ensure that you start to take better photos today. All right? Awesome. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and just dive straight in to the questions. We're not messing around. We're getting straight into it. So these first set of questions come from email. So this first question that I got comes from Mario. All right, Mario says, if I haven't found my niche or I haven't built a strong portfolio around what I want to photograph, what's the best way to set up my Facebook business page and or a website? Where do I start? All right, great question. The answer is you just set one up. Okay, there's a little bit more to it than that. My first website that I had photos of my personal life. I had photos of landscapes. I had photos of weddings, portraits, all of it, and I started booking clients slowly. But with every shoot, I learned more about, I think, my photography style, what it is that I liked, what it is that I didn't like. And when I realized, no one's hiring me for landscapes, well, I took those off my website. And then, actually, I don't really like seniors. So then I took those off my website until eventually it was just strictly weddings. So, my best advice for you is to just start. You don't have to put too much thought into it. And nobody is going to hold you to the fact that, wait a second, 5 years ago, your website said that you did newborns. And even though it doesn't say it now, you must shoot it. Nobody's going to say that, So just go ahead and start. Don't put too much thought into it. Just do it. Awesome. That was the first question. We got that first one done. Okay, second question. Second question comes from Connor. Connor says, my question is, in your opinion, is it worth studying photography to degree level before going out on my own to start a business? I just want to know if 3 years of university would be a good option to help me learn, improve, and grow my photography and contacts, as opposed to just going out into the world as I am now. Awesome question, Connor. You are clearly at a fork in the road right now and trying to figure out what is the best choice for you. And I will say, if you are the kind of person who finds it easy to meet new people and easy to pick up new skills, then no, you don't need a degree. No one is ever going to ask you on set, wait a second, like, you got to show me your proof that you have a degree in photography. Nobody's ever going to do that. Now, that said, I did go to film school, which is similar in that, I know many people who have moved to Los Angeles and just started networking, booking PA gigs, production assistant, like the lowest, spot on the totem pole essentially. And then they would learn on set and then they would move up. Now, I loved going to school because I made many connections that I still keep in contact with people that I graduated with. And I also had a place to where I could ask questions about light, lenses, camera movement, that if I was on set, well, if you're on a working set, it's a place for work, and you might not have the same availability to people because they are working. So it really is kind of a difficult decision, to just say either yes or no. You really have to ask yourself, what kind of person are you? Do you think that you will benefit from, learning in that communal setting? It is a bit slower, but at the same time, if you also suffer from imposter syndrome, which I would say, I do for sure, then going to school could alleviate some of that because you had some sort of formal education as well. So, Connor, I hope that helped answer your question. All right, next question here comes from Jose. Jose says, I just bought a very cheap secondhand 300 millimeter reflex mirror lens for my Fuji X-S10, as I wanted to experiment with a completely different focal length. I've read that most mirror lenses suffer from a rather mediocre optical performance in comparison with conventional refractive lenses. So I would like to know your opinion regarding reflex mirror lenses, if you have already used one, and if you can give some tips on how to get the most out of them despite their limitations. All right, so for those who do not know, a reflex mirror lens is there is a it's a large looking lens right in the front. Light comes in and then it hits a mirror and then bounces off of another mirror to then hit your camera's sensor. And this is untraditional because, as you can imagine, most lenses are just multiple pieces of glass layered on top of each other where light passes through and then it is shaped to hit onto your sensor. So with a mirror lens, it does not zoom. It is only one focal length. Light comes in, it goes onto the sensor, and then that's it. Because there's less glass, it is typically cheaper, which is why a lot of people use them, because it's a great way to, have a long focal length without making a huge investment in purchasing a long traditional refractive lens. So, all right, back to Jose's question. First thing I want to know is who is saying that the performance is poor? Because if the answer is professional photographers, well, their needs are different than yours, right? Like, you bought this lens to experiment with. As a professional photographer, they would need it for commissioned work. So if you shoot sports or wildlife professionally, you would happily invest in the best lens that you could, as it would help you to do your job better. A reflex mirror, I think it's not bad for personal use. It's just not for professional use, So I would say go out, go have fun, and experiment. Enjoy that new focal length and new field of view that you haven't had before, and just play around. Again, if you get to the point to where you find that you do want to shoot more sports or sports or wildlife, then again, you will happily invest in a traditional lens worth thousands of dollars because it will help you to do your job better. So that's it. I hope that helps. I don't think that you're going to hate it. It's not going to be as bad as you think. You're going to enjoy it. All right. Next question here is from Vina. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, please correct me. I apologize. Worse with names, but I hope I did that right. All right. Venus says, I regularly take photos of my kids' sports games. Perfect. And then I post pictures on an app called TeamSnap for parents to view or download. TeamSnap is only available to players, parents, and coaches for their particular teams through the sports organization. Okay? Only they have access to these photos. Over the years, I have developed a passion for sports photography, but I can't post my best sports photos on Instagram or Facebook because I don't have permission from the players' parents. How do people go about getting permission to post a photo of minors on social media? Is an email acceptable? Should the parents sign a form? Are there templates available anywhere for this kind of request? All right. Let me first start off by saying I am not a lawyer. All right. So take everything that I say here with a grain of salt. But the photos that you're taking that you want to post on Instagram and Facebook essentially are, you building a portfolio, right? So the question is, like, are you using these photos to build your portfolio and then in the hopes of booking another sports gig, right? You're not looking to sell these photos to anybody but parents or the kids or the coaches. And if that's the case, and if you're located here in America, and if these games are being played in a public place and you took the photos, then you technically have every right to post the photos online, regardless of their age. If someone is in a public place, then they technically give up their right to privacy. Now, I would ask the parents for permission if I had a specific photo, that I wanted to post, on my website or something like that. So one thing that you could do that could help cover your bases is before a game, you could go to coaches and let them know that you'll be shooting the game and maybe hand out some sort of business card that has your information and then ask the coaches to give it to the kids and say that if, they want to see those photos or if they would not like to have their photo posted online, then to contact you. That way, again, you've covered your bases. You've given them the opportunity to contact you if they don't want their photo online. But if they do want to see their photos, then you also have a potential customer. So I hope that helps. All right. Next question comes from Amy Louise. How does spot metering work with back button focusing? So spot metering and back button focusing are independent from each other. So spot metering measures the amount of light in a small area of your frame. Newer cameras tie that location to the spot reading to where your focus point is, which is awesome. To know if your camera does this, you would have to read up on your manual because not all cameras do it, but if your camera does, it will be in your manual. So look that up just to make sure. Back button focusing is when you tell your lens to focus independent from the shutter button, right? So you pull your camera straight out of the box, you half press on the shutter button, it's going to acquire focus. You full press on the shutter button, it then takes the photo. Back button focusing, you press a button on the back of the camera to get focus, and then when you half press on the shutter, it doesn't do anything. But when you full press on the shutter, then it takes the photo. This can be used for a multitude of reasons, but they're kind of related in that process, but when taking a photo, one does not affect the other. So I hope that helps answer your question, Amy. Let me know if you have any, further, more clarifying questions that you would like to ask there. Okay, next question, still in emails here. We got from Chris Wilcox. Chris says, I have a 15-year-old that is brand new to photography and taking a class in digital photography in the first year of high school. For needs his own DSLR. He needs his own DSLR. Which models would you recommend? Would something like a Lumix FX80 work, or should it definitely have interchangeable lenses? First of all, that's awesome. Congratulations. Very cool. Your son is about to embark on a very fun and exciting journey, and hopefully something that you two can do together. I would say that an interchangeable lens is great. However, I cannot imagine that they would require a student to buy an additional lens. So I would simply reach out to the teacher and ask to be sure. But I would think that as long as, whatever camera that they're using has the ability to shoot in manual control, to control their exposure, well, then they should be okay. But again, I would reach out to the teacher and ask just to clarify. So yeah, I think that's it. I hope that helps. All right, next question here is from Nicole. Nicole says, I would like to get into photography as a hobby, business / side hustle. Where should I start? And do I need to go back to school to make this happen? Nicole, how exciting for you. First thing, you don't need to go to school to make this happen. I did not go to business school. I would say if you did go back to learn business, you would probably be way better off than just winging it. But to start, what you need is some sort of portfolio to show potential clients. And I think portfolio can be kind of a big word. You just need a collection of images to show somebody that you're competent as a photographer. So to get started, if you don't have one, I would start by asking friends and family if they would be willing to help you, do a shoot with you. And then from that point, if they say yes, then I would then imagine, in my own brain, that they were complete strangers. So you can see it from their perspective, from the client side, what it would look like. Because oftentimes, when we're just dealing with friends and family, maybe you'll text them, maybe you'll call them, maybe, you'll just shoot them a message on Facebook. And all of those things are fine because that's your friend. And I'm not saying that business needs some sort of special communication, but it needs some sort of consistent communication. And for me, I found that email is just the best way. Not only can it, keep track of, all the communications that I've sent out, but then I can set that up within my CRM 17 Hats to be able to schedule out certain emails that will help. So, think about emails, email your friends and family who agreed to do this maybe a few days before with possibly wardrobe tips. And then email them the day before to remind them of the time and location, and maybe what they need to bring, if anything, for the shoot. But then at the end of the shoot, I would also give them expectations, when they can expect to see the photos. Then rather than just simply emailing them the photos or putting them on a CD, I would grab a free CloudSpot account, which you can sign up for over at deliverphotos.com. Just so that you can deliver a professional viewing experience and even sell prints with a free account. You don't need to suffer and give your friends and family and new potential clients a terrible experience because, you think that these fancy gallery softwares are expensive. You can get started for free, and it's not just through email and then they're wondering, why are these photos so big, or how do I download these, or, there's no questions about it. It's right there. And all you got to do is just follow the instructions. And that's because, I have found that photographing clients is way less about the photos, which is unfortunate. We as photographers wish that it was our photos that would stand out and make people want to book us, but it's really more about the experience that you can deliver. So if you deliver a great experience to your friends and family, then they will rave about you to their family and friends, and then that's when new clients start coming in. So focus on that experience, and it will work out for you. I hope that helps. All right, next question here comes from Joe. Joe says, what is your recommendation for photographer's accounting system, bookkeeping software? Currently, I'm using Excel, but I want something more robust as my business grows. And then bonus question, how do I get more visibility on social media? Okay, first question. I use QuickBooks because it automatically syncs with my bank transactions and allows me to make really quick reports at the end of the year. Come tax time, lets me know how much I spent on, maybe too much on camera gear and not enough on advertising. But you don't need something like that. I also, my CRM 17 Hats, which I just mentioned, also has bookkeeping built in on top of the business management side of things. So if you don't want to use Excel anymore and you are looking for some sort of all-in-one, then I would check out 17 Hats because that's going to help you with things like bookkeeping, of course, sending quotes to clients, creating contracts, keeping all of that in order, as well as a calendar of all of your events. And then as far as next question, visibility on social media. Okay, so first I would ask, what is your goal? Is it to have a large following, or is it to book clients? I really think that the best way to book clients with social is, unfortunately, spending the money and doing ads. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, both are I have found enormous success with. And when it comes to the social media side of things, I just schedule out all of my social media just to have some sort of presence. If somebody wants to come look at my profile. But if I want to book clients, I run ads. But if your goal is to grow an audience, then you need to do either one of two things. You either need to entertain your audience, or you need to educate your audience. And if your content just isn't going off as maybe you think it should, or you wish it would, then I would probably look for some blogs on social media by social media experts. Unfortunately, that's just not my zone of genius. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that helps point you in the right direction. Okay, next question here comes from Addison. Addison says, my question, I feel it is simple, but you might have other ideas. How can you make your image be what you actually see? I always see a scene and think that would be a great photo, but it never turns out well. Well, Addison, you're not alone. This is very common. This is called the creative gap. And essentially, the only way to close that gap is to visualize the photo that you want to take, what you're doing, adjust your camera settings to what you think you need to capture it. Then you take a photo, and then you obviously look at it, and then you readjust. Now, you may be at the point to where you're not sure what all the buttons and dials do, and you can't imagine being able to do that with your camera yet. And if so, that simply means that you just need to keep shooting right now, right? You're in that phase to where you just need the education on how this tool works before you can start creating things. So the more that you shoot, the more practice you get. The more practice you get, the better photos that you'll take. And then that's how you close that creative gap. But if you want more information about, the creative gap, which we just talked about here, I learned this back in my interview with Mark Silber in episode number 65. So again, if you want more information about that, go check out interview number 65 with Mark Silber. Lots of great stuff in there. Okay, next question comes from Caroline. Caroline says, my struggles lately are lighting. I need to buy lighting, but I'm on a limited budget after recently investing in other camera gear. I've been relying on natural light as well as a speed light flash. It's very new, so I'm still working out how to get the most out of it, but I feel like I need a freestanding, consistent light source of some sort that I can control. What are the best lighting options here without having to spend thousands of dollars? Also, what do you think about incident light meters? I'm not sure if I should prioritize this or if I'm fine to go without. Okay, so Caroline, consistent lighting is far less powerful or versatile than a speed light flash. There are very, very few use cases in which I would consider using consistent lighting over flash for photography. I would highly recommend that you just keep practicing with your flash. And honestly, if you really need help now, then I would encourage you to check out my course, Flash in a Flash. It is everything that you need to know to get started in Flash right away. It's geared for beginners. And you know what? You can take 50% off of the course if you want to use the code 300 for this episode. So just head over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com, click the education tab at the top. You'll find Flash in a Flash there. And then again, use code 300 to take 50% off of the course if you really need help, because I know, again, having used both, that Flash is just once you get the hang of it, it is way, way, way easier to use and better and more versatile and more creative and awesome than consistent lighting. And since you already have the speed light, dive deeper into that. So I hope that helps. As far as the incident light meter goes, your camera's light meter is already phenomenal. So unless you're shooting film, I wouldn't bother buying one. I have one. I've never used it for digital photography, just for when shooting film. Okay, next question here comes from Eileen. Eileen says, I'm planning on getting a domain name and website. So my question is, which hosting company do you recommend most for somebody just starting out? I don't have a business or even clients yet, but I hope to in the future and figured I should secure my domain name. When I first built my website, first of all, having a website is incredibly important. Over the years, I cannot tell you how many changes I've seen made to social media, making it very difficult to, be all in on that, because at the drop of a hat, they can and have in the past decided we're just going to change everything and you're going to have to adjust. So having a website is kind of like your home base on the internet. So very smart to want to have a website. What was I saying? When I first built my website, I signed up with Squarespace, and I still use them today. I think that they are a great choice if you are just, you want to get up and running quickly without too much technical know-how. And as far as domain names, I use Google Domains. And then within Squarespace, you simply click one button and it's all linked together. Awesome stuff. Okay, next question here comes from Michelle. Michelle says, how do I get better light to the person outside when trying to do portraits? It's usually windy and I do not have an assistant. All right, Michelle, I also do not typically do outdoor sessions with an assistant, so I'm right there with you. Learning to see light is a process. It's a long process. When shooting outside, I try to keep my subjects back to the sun. That way, their face is more evenly lit, and then they just look better. But honestly, I think I would have to see an example photo of what you are considering, quote unquote, poor lighting to give you more direct feedback. So feel free to post your photo in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook community. You can tag me in it, and I'd be happy to give you a better answer than that. So I hope that helps. I look forward to seeing your photo. Okay, next question here comes from Michael. Michael says, people seem to like what I shoot, and I receive quite a few compliments on my pictures rather. However, very often I feel kind of empty after that. I would like to take photos that make a difference to the people around me, photos that impact the viewer. How do I find those kinds of photos, and what do I do with them once I take them? All right, so if we are taking portraits, then I find that time and patience and being genuinely interested in who they are and their story, you can get some really great and authentic photos that will impact them. If you are shooting landscapes or non-portrait work, then I would say, don't worry about anybody else. When you ask, how do I find those kind of photos? The answer is, there's a quote, and I'm not sure by whom, but it is, to be interesting, you have to be interested. So simply by being interested in the world around you, capture that. By being very interested in something, then the community will then be interested in what it is that in your work when you go to share that. I think if there was one answer for, how to find those photos that can really impact people, everybody would do it. It really takes time and patience and self-exploration to figure out what it is that you want to say with your camera, and then other people will notice that. And then that's when those photos will genuinely make an impact. Okay, next question here is from Aza. Aza, I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. Again, if I'm not, let me know. Ozza says, if there was one piece of advice that you would give yourself when you started to save yourself the most time or heartache, what would you tell beginner Raymond? Ooh, that is a good question. I know that I've definitely asked others this, so I should have been prepared. I think I would tell myself to stop shooting for others. There's I feel like there's three spaces where you can be as a photographer. You can be somebody who you love your own work. You can be somebody who is commercially successful, or you can be somebody who is both, right? So you find yourself creatively successful, commercially successful, or both. Okay, so when I first started, like, I already knew my camera settings, right? So I didn't focus on getting better as a photographer. I'm talking about like starting a business, right? I already knew all the camera settings. I didn't have to do both at the same time. I chose to intentionally focus on the business side of growing a business. Now, my photos, they did get better on their own, and that's just from shooting consistently. You know, I discover things that I like. I do more of that. I discover things that I don't like. I do less of that. And I would try new things from time to time, but those things that I would try would typically be based off of what somebody else would do in their wedding work. And I thought, oh, wow, that's, really interesting. The couple would really love that. But I never really fell in love with my photos because I liked my photos, okay? I liked my photos and I liked them a lot. Don't get me wrong, but they were never me. They were always made for somebody else, right? When I shoot a wedding, I'm not shooting those photos for me. I'm shooting them for another couple. And therefore, when shooting, I would take that into consideration, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But there is such a large gap between what I shoot at weddings and what I shoot in my personal time. And honestly, only recently I've realized that it's not simply because, one has a couple in it and then the other one does not, but it's because I'm more free to shoot however I wish, or I'm free to make more mistakes, or, try something new just to try something new, when I'm shooting for myself. And that has been it's been a really fun time for me photographically because of that. And I wish that I would have known that or leaned into that sooner. I wish that I would have gave myself more space to play around, try new things, make mistakes, rather than just simply shooting for the album all the time, right? Quote unquote, shooting for the album. Because I think at the end of the day, anybody can take a photo. We know that. Everybody has a cell phone. Anybody can take a photo. Anybody can learn manual. Anybody can learn to expose even a difficult scene in poor light. Yeah, it may take time, but you get the idea. Anybody can learn how to do that. But nobody will see the world through my eyes, and therefore, that is every photographer's biggest asset. That is every photographer's biggest selling point. And it's only those who are brave enough to trust themselves 100% who will be both a creative success and a commercial success. Yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself. That is a great question. I hope that helps. I hope that you found some sort of value in that. That was awesome. Okay, next question. So these next sets of questions come from Facebook. Okay, Kim says, hold on. Getting a little bit parched. Okay, Kim says, how did you know you were ready to take the leap of faith and start a business? In my head, it sounds so awesome, but then I see all the roadblocks and I'm not sure I will ever feel quote unquote ready or quote unquote good enough, even if the time comes and my skills are appropriate. How did I know I was ready to take the leap of faith? I think simply I couldn't not. I knew that I wanted to shoot weddings, so I started a business mostly for tax purposes to be able to write off all the cool cameras and lenses and lights that I wanted to buy. But I did still have a full-time job, and I kept it until it got in the way of me shooting weddings. And weddings were bringing in enough to where our family could survive. So yeah, I didn't, it wasn't like I had this idea that one day I want to be a professional photographer and I hope that it can happen one day. And, I wonder when that's going to happen and when am I going to do it? I was already like in the middle of it when I had my job. So I couldn't not, it was already proven. I had clients, and then simply work got in the way. My full-time job got in the way of me shooting weddings full time. So I had to do it. And I would highly suggest taking that route rather than saying, you know what, I'm going to be a photographer. I'm quitting my job right now. And then just hoping for the best, because it is difficult at times. So, keep that safety net as long as you can until you can't. Next question here also comes from a Kim, different Kim. Kim number 2 says, how do I decide where to invest my money? I have a kit lens and a Nifty 50. I've outgrown the kit, but enjoy shooting literally everything, and I don't know how to narrow it down. Great question. Lenses are expensive. Cameras are expensive. You want to, make sure that you don't screw it up. So when I first started, I wanted all the lenses. And since I didn't know what one to buy first, I simply rented lenses. I would rent a 24-70, and then shoot a wedding or two, and then I would rent a 16-35, and then I would shoot a wedding or two with it, and then I would rent a 135, and then I would shoot a wedding or two with it, and eventually I found that I loved shooting weddings with just a 35mm lens and an 85mm lens. That's it. So that's what I shoot with now, and I didn't have to spend thousands on a lens that I thought that I would like, but I didn't, and then I would just be too stubborn to sell it, and then it would hurt my growth in photography. So again, I can't recommend highly enough just renting your lenses to see which ones you like the most and fit your style of photography. I use cameralensrentals.com, cameralensrentals.com. They're actually here local to me. They are hands down also the cheapest lens rental company and have the best customer service of any lens rental company I've ever used. So check them out. Again, that is lensrentals.com. Okay, next question here comes from Daniel. Daniel says, screen calibration. How important? How often? Recommended programs? Lastly, being pictures are viewed across all sorts of screens through multiple different devices. How do you calibrate yours to take that into account? Daniel, great question. Screen calibration is incredibly important. I use a Spider monitor calibration tool. I think that the current one is it's like a Spider X Pro or something like that. I have a Spider 5. They don't make anymore. But, I mean, the thing is, okay, hold on. I calibrate my monitors at the beginning of a wedding season and then again around September, just to prep for all of the October weddings. And it changes very slightly or not at all sometimes. If you're printing your work, I would say monitor calibration is imperative. If not, I would look into buying one used, calibrate your monitor, get a good base, and then just resell it. Unless you are, switching between computers, monitors, like all sorts of things. If you have like one consistent desk setup, oh yeah, that's another thing. If it's at a desk, just calibrate it the one time. You'll probably be good to go forever. If you have a laptop, it's a little bit different because, you can move your laptop around to different places. You'll be in different lighting situations, and that can affect the color accuracy of the monitor. But if you have a desktop, I would just use it and you're not printing. I would just use it the once, calibrate it, again, resell it. That'll give you a good enough base. And then, having a color accurate monitor is going to help with colors displaying properly on other devices as well. Cell phones, iPhones, all those monitors, all those screens rather, are color calibrated. So if you can color calibrate your monitor, you can have much better success on those other devices as well. Okay. Hope that helped. Kind of a technical answer there. Okay, next question here comes from Misty. Misty says, how do you scout the best places to shoot? Any tips? Yeah. So when you live and shoot locally, I think it is, uh, you got to get out and shoot, and then you can build up a list of spots that you like real quick. I look for local parks, nature preserves, trails, things like that, outdoors. At the end of the year, last year, I went out to Denver for an engagement session, and not being from there or having access to it readily, I went on Google Maps and simply searched for, for like some parks. If you're just on Google Maps and like you zoom into a place, if a place is highlighted green, then it is some sort of park or preserve or something like that. So I knew that that's what I was looking for, and then I would simply click on one and then scroll through all the pictures that were uploaded to determine if that would work for our needs or not. And then the place that we ended up going to, it was great. It had really scenic views, and since it was right on the edge of the mountain range, we got the sunrise hitting us as well. So Google Maps can be a huge help when scouting out locations. So I would definitely try that. Also, it wasn't perfect. Like, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but again, it was close enough. It just gave me some sort of idea. Okay, there's going to be trees, there's going to be views, there's going to be, a trail. I can work with all those things. I don't need a ton of space to be able to walk around and, do a session. So I knew that it was good enough for my needs there. All right, next question here comes from Lyndon. Lyndon says, portrait photo quality between a good quality older camera, say a 5D Mark III, and a newer camera like an R6. So I'm not sure what the most important aspect of a portrait for you is, Lyndon. Is it the amount of light data in the raw file? Is it simply having the most megapixels, or do you want the best looking JPEGs out of camera? I know that the original 5D, which is like a 12 megapixel sensor, I think it came out in 2006 or something like that. Maybe 2000, earlier than that. It had to have been earlier than that. Anyway, that sensor is still a huge hit with many portrait photographers because it renders tones very closely to how film did. Whereas there are other photographers who need the most megapixels available. So I would say the best bet for you is just to get your hands on the two cameras that you are considering and test them out for yourself. Photography is a very personal thing. There are many cameras that on paper are technically better than, my Fuji X Pro 2. But I still stick with it because it does everything that I want it to and everything that I need it to. And I only know that because I have used it. If I was just looking at a spec sheet, I probably wouldn't buy it. But again, because I've used it, I know that it works best for me. So hope that helps. All right, next question here comes from Henry. Henry, all right. Henry asks, what is a telltale sign that you need to upgrade cameras? I'm a firm believer of gear not being the utmost importance, but lately I've been finding myself more and more saying, I wish I could push my ISO a bit more on this camera, or I wish I had a tad more megapixels for this shot. Or I could have used more frames per second here to catch that shot. Is this what needing better gear feels like? Yeah, it is. If you are actively missing shots because your camera's limited abilities on a consistent basis, yeah, it is. It is time for you to upgrade, and you can, bring that to your fiance. You can let her know. I said, yes, it is time to upgrade. All right, next question here comes from Brad. Brad says, what is the easiest way to bend off-camera flash? Oh, to blend, sorry. I need to learn how to read. What is the easiest way to blend off-camera flash with outdoor ambient light in different daylight hours? Okay, so flash is daylight color balance. So all that you need to do is match the light's intensity. So I would start with the flash off. Get your settings to where your background and ambient light looks like a good exposure. It's what you want. And then simply turn on your flash. If your flash is too bright, if the photo's too bright, don't touch your camera settings. Just adjust your flash settings, either more or less light, until you are happier with the results. I feel like that may require a YouTube video to to be able to explain that a little bit better. But if you have any follow-up questions with that, Brad, let me know. I'd be happy to help. Okay, next question here comes from Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, autofocus, eye and face detection. Best situations to use this versus manual or single focus. Are there times when single focus is better than autofocus and vice versa? Yeah, so there are several autofocus modes, and they are all called different things with each camera brand. So I hope that I can do this and still make sense for a lot of you. So single point is when you are using the smallest autofocus point on your camera. This is great for when your subject is close and focus is critical for the photo. Say if you're taking a portrait of somebody, you want to make sure that their eye that is closest to camera is in focus. Next is, at least on Fuji, is called zone autofocus, which is more like a cluster of autofocus points. So say, like a 9x9 square of autofocus points. I use this the majority of the wedding day, where, I'm close enough to where focus is obviously important, but not so close that the viewer would see that the camera focused on my subject's ear rather than their eyes. So if somebody is 10 to 12 plus feet away, that's when I would use zone autofocus. Lastly is wide autofocus. This enables all of the autofocus points on your camera, and your camera determines what to focus on. I don't use that. And then on top of that, there's also face/eye autofocus. So if the camera detects a face, it will focus on that. And in theory, that sounds awesome. But in practice at a wedding, there can be a lot of faces. And I've found that more often than not that the camera will choose the wrong face to focus on. And of course, it only happens when I, really need a specific focus. So therefore, I don't use it at a wedding, but I do use it at an engagement session because, well, there's just less people for, to screw up. So it's going to catch that face. And then on top of all of that, then there's also manual focus. I only use manual focus at a wedding during the reception. On the dance floor, moment is everything. You want that like wild laugh or, something like that. And in low light, your camera is going to hunt for focus. And when it does that, you miss the moment, you miss the shot. So I set my lens's focus distance to about 5 feet. This is my 23 millimeter lens. I set my focus distance to about 5 feet. And then I set my aperture to f8, which gives me a depth of field so that anything in between about 3.5 feet and 9 feet will be in acceptable focus. If somebody's 3 feet, 3.5 feet in front of me, they will be in acceptable focus. If they are 9 feet away from me, they will be in acceptable focus because I'm shooting at f8. And then when on the dance floor, that's exactly how far away I am from somebody. So I know that my photos will be in focus and not have to use autofocus. I feel like there's more to say about all this, but I think that's about as technical as I'm going to get here today. I hope that helps. Again, any follow-up questions with example photos would be phenomenal if you want to share those. Okay, next question here comes from Ashley. Ashley says, starting from scratch, what camera is recommended that isn't going to break the bank? Right now, I'm just very much starting out and enjoying taking pictures of objects, humans and pets, and the occasional sunset or tree. All right, so Ashley, I think that the Fuji X-T20 is the best bang for the buck camera on the market. Truly amazing image quality and feature sets. You can buy it used. There are plenty of Facebook groups online to where you can buy the Fuji X-T20. But if you are, really concerned about buying things from somebody else, scammed or whatever, then my go-to place to buy used camera gear is KEH.com. KEH.com. They have one actually right now, right before this, I checked. They have one listed in excellent condition for $515. You can pair that with a $318 18 to 55 2.8 to f4 lens. And that kit is seriously, it's going to be amazing for getting started and will grow with you for a number of years, which I'm not sure that I can say about many newer entry level cameras, with them just being totally made out of plastic, and they're going to be more expensive if you buy them new as well. So, yeah, that is my recommendation, and I hope that helps. All right. Now we got a question here from Taylor. Taylor says, how do you blend? Oh, we got another blending light question. How do you blend flash with orange, yellow ambient light that all wedding venues have nowadays? Ah, yes. You do that with something called a CTO gel. CTO, that stands for color temperature orange. It's an orange piece of plastic gel that you put in front of your flash. Then that turns all of the light coming out of the flash the same color as the rest of the lights in the venue. And then on your camera, you set your white balance to tungsten, and then you are all set. Nice white light in all of your photos. I hope that makes sense. Kind of technical, but if you go back and listen to that a few times, you should be able to get that. CTO gels, you can buy them on Amazon. Super cheap. Yeah, phenomenal to be able to match lighting temperatures. Next question that we got here is from Brianna. Brianna says, do you remember when everything you learned just came together and made sense? Meaning when it became second nature rather than feeling lost. I don't. I don't think that there was a single moment, mostly because I was taught a lot of exposure settings in film school. So when it came to use them in photography, they just directly transferred over. So it's not like I was sitting there with my camera and couldn't figure anything out. But I will say that in film school, what we did is that we would start with our ISO, like to build an exposure. We would start with our ISO because, well, we had to choose which film we were going to use, and the film dictates what ISO you're going to use. So I would start with an ISO, and then as far as shutter speed goes, 99% of the time your shutter speed is kind of locked in at 1/48th of a second to give you a natural motion blur for cinema. And then you would just simply set your aperture to whatever your light meter would say was properly exposed. And then that's it. That's how you would shoot in manual with a film camera. Today, I teach a similar approach, but kind of tweak it a little bit for digital, where, again, you start with your ISO, you guesstimate your ISO for how much light is available. If it's bright sun, use ISO 100. If it's dark indoors, 1600, and then 2 to 800 for anything in between. And then you set your aperture for how much you want to be in focus. If you're shooting portraits, f1.8 to f2, 2.8. And then f8 to 16 for landscapes, and then everything in between would be f2.8 to f5.6. And then from there, you just simply adjust your shutter speed to whatever your light meter would say is properly exposed. And then you would just simply adjust from there to make it all brighter or darker. So hope that helps. Okay, next question here comes from Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, what does photography mean to you, and how would you represent it in a picture? Wow, what does photography mean to me? So much. Photography represents creative expression. Photography also represents an income to me. The camera's like a hero. So I don't know, maybe something that would make the camera look heroic. Nice low angle. Fill the frame with the camera. Some sort of interesting yet simple background lighting. I don't know. Something like that. Something heroic. Something simple yet heroic. Yeah, that was fun. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. I like that. Okay, next question here comes from Judith. Judith says, how in the heck can I take a self-portrait? I cannot figure it out. I have a Sony a7 III, and I can't get it to focus when I run in front of the camera in pose. I have been there. Luckily, the a7 III has an app from Sony. I would look into downloading it on your phone so that you can sit in front of your camera and make sure that you are in focus, and then just take all the photos from your phone. So that's what I would do. Cool. Okay, next question, several questions, comes from Jackie. Okay, Jackie says, what is the best way to avoid harsh lighting at the beach or other bodies of water that reflect? So either you back up away from them so that they're not reflecting directly onto your subject's face, or you have your subject's back be to the water so that, again, reflections won't hit them in the face. Okay, next question is, what is the best setup lighting wise for a flat lay clothing photography? I keep getting shadows and my employer is not a fan. Yeah, so for nice, soft, even light, you want a nice, large, even light source. So something like a softbox, attached to a flash, and then just bring that as close as you can to your clothing without getting in the photo. The larger the light source, the softer the light. So large light source produces soft light, and then again, you bring it really close to reduce the amount of fall off and filling in those shadows. And then lastly, Jackie asks, how do you make customers laugh and get the best genuine smiles, specifically men? Yes, man, I cannot tell you how many times, Jackie, I've shown up to an engagement session and clearly the guy did not want to be there. So I feel your pain. And the short answer is you don't. You are not a comedian, so don't try. Instead, what I do is I just simply ask them questions that could get them to think. For engagement sessions, I will ask my couples, who's the better cook? What are they, what does the other person love that you wish that you could throw away? Who was the first one to fart in the relationship? Something ridiculous. Who was the most nervous on the first date? Just dumb stuff. It's just going to get their mind off of the camera and again start thinking about each other, and then they will just naturally laugh. We are just going to keep pumping through these. Okay, wow. Lots of them. Next question here, it comes from Daniel. Daniel says, what are the major differences in structure and business model from a business standpoint for wedding photographers and sports photographers? I hear a lot from podcast episodes about how to approach business models for wedding photographers, but I'd love to hear your take on the variations of sports photographers, from event staff at a sporting arena to local shooters selling single photos to amateur or photographers specializing in youth sports, or even the ones who do sports portraits. Yeah, so at the end of the day, Daniel, I think you can make money however you want to structure your business in photography. But I would say weddings you get paid up front, before you shoot. In sports, you get paid after. But you laid them all out, staff photographers, freelance photographers, sports portrait photographers. I'm not sure that I 100% understand the question. So again, feel free to ask a follow-up question in the group, and I'd be happy to explain any more than that. But I think you got it. I think that's it. Just deciding which one you want to pursue. All right, next question here comes from Deanna. Deanna says, what is the best lighting setup for portrait photography indoors? So, Deanna, it really depends on the type of look that you're going for. If you're going for an environmental portrait, or are you going for a headshot, are you shooting family photography? In general, you want some nice soft light on your subject. I find that if you don't have any lights, window light is beautiful if you can get your subject close enough to that window. If not, I use a flash with a large softbox to provide that soft lighting. So there you go. I hope that helps. Hope that makes sense, Deanna. Okay, next question here comes from Mark. Mark says, what is the best way to shoot dark and moody photos when you have a lot of bright natural light? Do you underexpose in camera, or would it be best to get normal exposure and edit the photo to get the look that you want? So with dark and moody photos, typically there's no real highlights, right? You are just accentuating I don't want to say the light that's there, of course, but there's no bright spots. There's nothing overexposed. There's no highlights, which is kind of the opposite of dark and moody, or I'm sorry, bright and airy. So for dark and moody photos to shoot in that style, a lot of it has to do with the editing. But in camera, I would definitely make sure that you shoot slightly underexposed, That way you're not going to have any highlights in the shot. So when you go ahead and edit it, it'll look a lot cleaner for that dark and moody look that you are going for. So I hope that helps. Next question here is from Sophie. Sophie says, what do you shoot for inspiration or for personal work? My kids. I love photographing my kids because I know that this time is going by too quickly, and photos will allow us to look back on these times and hold on to them for a bit longer. So I'm kind of shooting for the future, if that makes sense. But yeah, as far as, personal work, that's the majority of it. Sometimes I'll go out and, if there's something interesting, I'll go out and shoot that as well. But that's more of a one-off type thing. I just really love to photograph our family and kids. Next question comes from Melanie. Melanie asks, what is the difference between a straight 50mm lens and the 50mm setting on a lens that has a range? Yeah, so a straight 50mm lens is called a prime lens. It does not zoom. And a lens with a range is called a zoom lens. And it's really funny. I vividly remember asking this question when I first got into photography. And maybe it's crazy that this is now the 300th episode of the podcast, but I remember before starting the podcast, my wife had asked, she's like, you sure you want to, start a podcast? Like, it's going to take, a lot of time. Why? Like, what's the motivation to start a podcast? And I remember thinking back to this exact question because to me, now the answer is very clear, but I remember having that question back then of like, why would I buy a 50mm lens when my, zoom lens can zoom into 50mm and, it's more versatile. So I'm really excited to answer this question. Really what it comes down to is two things. A prime lens, a straight 50mm lens, a prime lens is going to be generally sharper than a zoom lens. Actually anything is sharper than the 18 to 55 lens that comes with, your Canon or Nikon camera. And second, a prime lens will have a larger aperture at 50mm. So at 50mm, your zoom lens, the largest aperture, opening, the maximum aperture is f5.6. On a 50mm prime lens, the maximum aperture is f1.8. And that's a difference of 3 stops. 3 stops is a lot. A prime lens allows in 3 stops more light. That's huge. That's the difference between shooting at ISO 400 and ISO 3200. And if you have an entry-level camera, that is a massive, massive, massive difference. And on top of the large maximum aperture like f1.8, f1.8 will give you that narrow depth of field. That depth of field is how much of your subject is going to be in focus. So at 1.8, if you're close enough to your subject, their eyes will be in focus, but their nose and their ears will be out of focus. And then subsequently, so will the background of the image will also be out of focus, which that's a look that, many find very pleasing. So, that is the difference between a prime 50mm lens and the 50mm focal length on a zoom lens. Okay, next we have a question here from Katie. Katie says, other than the R series, which of Canon's cameras are best for sports photography? I would love the R5, but going mirrorless would basically be like starting over, and I just can't afford that right now. Yeah, totally understand. The best Canon DSLR for sports photography, aside from, the $5,000 1DX series, is the 7D Mark II. It has a high burst rate of 10 frames per second and a crop sensor that means that you can get closer to the action than you could with a full frame camera. And again, right before this, I just checked. KEH has the 7D Mark II listed for as low as $599, which is a really good deal if you shoot sports or wildlife. I mean, I don't know what the next iteration of this camera would be, because this one is just still like phenomenal. Really, really good. Really good. All right, cool. So that was all of the questions that we had from email and Facebook. Now, I also ask people to ask questions through video. I sent them a link, and then you could just press the button and record a video, for whatever your question is. So the first question that we got here is from Ty. Ty says, well, unfortunately, the video did not come through. But Ty's question is, he says, my question is about editing, on rather going back to re-edit old work once you have started to fall into a style that fits you. Would you advise to re-edit or simply just start building a portfolio with new images that fits? Or is this something that could work both ways? Yeah, so I don't really do this. I know many people who do, but my brain works best to just move forward. There have been times where I wanted to use a photo from a few years ago on my website, and then when I went to export it from Lightroom, I realized, oh, it's too warm or a touch overexposed. I'll correct that issue now and then export it. But I'll never go back and re-edit like a whole wedding or something. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Next question here comes from Shane. Shane says,
Hey Raymond, Shane Wilkie here, coming at you from beautiful Cape Breton, Nova Scotia today. I got 2 questions to contribute to your 300th episode Q&A, but first I just want to say congrats on 300 episodes, man. That's awesome. So first question is, in your personal experience, speed light or strobe, and why? And my second question, and I saved the serious questions for last, what do you put on hot dogs?
how cool was that? First of all, mustard and sauerkraut, just a tiny bit of ketchup or relish, depending on how wild I feel in that moment, to balance out the acidity from the mustard and the kraut. And then secondly, speed lights. They are powerful enough for everything that I need, and they are much smaller than studio strobes. So thank you so much for that question. All right, next question we got here comes from Ashley. Ashley says,
Hey Raymond, my name is Ashley, and I just want to get on here. I don't have any questions, but I do love your photography podcast. I mostly do wildlife, landscapes, and sunsets. I've been fascinated with tree branches here lately. Don't know why, just have been. I just overall love just listening to your podcasts when I'm either editing, working out, at work. I'll listen to your podcast, but I don't have any questions. That's
oh, Ashley, I am so happy that you are enjoying the podcast. And you know what? If tree branches are your thing right now, then you go get it. Photograph those tree branches. Make some magic. That is so cool. Okay. Next question here comes from Roberto. Roberto says, let me get this up.
Hi Raymond, my name is Roberto. I'm a photographer from New Jersey. I love your podcast, and my question would be, I started into sports photography and I shoot with a Nikon Z6. My question would be, when would you decide to shoot at, at the max at 1/8,000th of a second? Or I found it that up to like 1/3000th of a second it will freeze the image, just fine for me. What's your take on that? And also, bonus side question, if I only shoot at 1/8000th of a second, that's a guaranteed effect on the shutter's lifespan, right? But those are my questions, and thank you for everything that you do for the community. Awesome job, man. Thank you.
Awesome question. So the difference between 1/3000th of a second and 1/8000th of a second shutter speed is less about freezing faster motion and more about having more control of your light. So most entry-level cameras go up to, say, 1/4000th of a second, but prosumer and professional cameras will go up to 1/8000th of a second, again, just for the additional stop of light control. As for the pressure on the shutter, at 1/8000th of a second, in your camera, like theoretically, could then shoot 4,000 photos per second, but your camera just simply can't keep up. Most film cameras only went up to 1/500th of a second, maybe 1/1000th of a second. So technology keeps pushing the boundaries forward, and I wouldn't worry about that at all. If you need it, use it. So there you go. Thanks, Roberto, so much for your question. Okay, next we got something here from Magda. Magda, let's hear this.
Hi, I'm Magda Stolte. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a hobbyist photographer and Lens Baby ambassador. I just wanted to say congratulations on 300 episodes. Keep doing what you're doing. You are awesome, and this podcast is amazing. Just quickly wanted to ask, what is your favorite gear to shoot with?
Magda also forgot to mention that she is one of the incredible beginner photography podcast moderators who help keep the Facebook community fun, safe, and active. So again, Magda, awesome. As far as my favorite gear, it really does depend on my mood. Honestly, in general, I want the smallest kit possible, which is why I send 60 emails a day to Fuji asking them to make an update to their next to perfect, but aged, Pocketable X70. Outside of that, recently I just picked up an 18 millimeter lens for my X Pro 2, and that has made me just fall in love with this camera all over again. It is so much fun. I also picked up an Olympus Mew camera. It is a point and shoot film camera. I've already thrown a few rolls through it, and I'm just waiting for the film to come back. But it is small. It is pocketable. All automatic. Has fantastic controls and whatnot. And I will be making a YouTube video about that as an everyday carry. But, when we go out to, say, the beach or a water park, or, I just want to give the kids one of my cameras, then my favorite pieces of gear is the GoPro, because it's rugged, So lots of fun stuff for me, but it's all about, I think, having the right gear for the situation. I don't think that there's one perfect camera, that can tackle all of my needs, but I do think there is a small handful that helps me capture 95% of the ideas that pop into my head. So there you go. Awesome. Okay, so next video here comes from Saul. Saul, here we go.
Hi, Raymond. This is Saul Lowry, and I'm here to just say thank you for everything you've given me so far. I've been listening to your podcast and been pretty much using you as my mentor since 2019, if you can remember. And since then, I've really grown my business to a huge mass. 2019 made roughly probably $500 to $1,000. Very humble beginning. It was like the end of the year when I started hearing your podcast, so I started working. And in 2020, when everybody was receding, trying to figure it out, I blew up and made $12,000. And in 2021 was the crazy year. Last year I made $25,000 in my business. That's videography and photography. I have my LLC, Saul Lowry Productions, and I got the website finally, SaulLowryProductions.com. And I got only you to think for it. And then also my military career as far as professionalism and everything coming together. But I just want to say thank you for everything you've given me. Every training you've ever gotten has been amazing. All right, keep the podcast coming. Let's go.
Wow, Saul, man, wearing the Beginner Photography Podcast shirt as well. Saul, seeing your growth has been truly phenomenal, and what Saul failed to mention is that he did all of this while active duty in the military, So once you're out, man, and you have the free time to work on your business, like, you're going to really take off. And I'm so happy to have had a front row seat to those earliest days in photography for you. It is, truly incredible stuff. So awesome. All right. So next video we got here is also from Henry. So we got another one here from Henry. Henry, here we go.
Hi, my name is Henry Walk. I'm from Los Angeles. I wanted to share with you folks what the Beginner Photography Podcast means to me. This is actually more of a testament to Raymond, the host. After a long-winded email to Raymond about how, as a newcomer, I can approach the business of photography and sort of find my lane, his advice was tremendous to me. Essentially, he said that I need to find what I can uniquely offer as a photographer and to whom as a customer. Within that, I'll find my niche and my lane. And that's something that's really hit home with me, and it's just been a tremendous help to me. And I think that's a testament to what this podcast is about. Thank you, Raymond, for creating this online home for us to come to learn and to share and to enjoy. And congratulations on 300 episodes. Thank you.
What? Henry, wow, man. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you very much. I remember that email well. I could read the frustration. I could sense that frustration, and I'm so happy that you found that advice valuable. And I appreciate you, Henry. Thank you, and I appreciate you for listening in, and everyone who submitted questions. And now I have a little bit of a surprise. For everyone who submitted a question, I put your name into a random name picker, and I'm going to give away to the winner their choice of one of my popular photography courses. They can choose from Auto to Amazing, which is the fastest way to learn photography, Lightroom 101, from import to export and everything in between, or Flash in a Flash, where you will learn how to use an off-camera or on-camera flash in a flash. There you go. So let's go ahead and check this out. Okay, let's go ahead and press spin here. Hey, okay, the winner is Deanna Lee. Congratulations, Deanna. How exciting. This is so cool. Go ahead and shoot me an email and I will get you set up with your course of choice. Again, you can choose from Auto to Amazing, Lightroom 101, or Flash in a Flash. So cool. Love to give away things, especially on this 300th bonus episode. How could we not give away something? But you know what? I'm not done, okay? So I got two last things here that I want to share with you, all about the future of the podcast that I am so excited about. So you come here, you listen to the podcast for one reason. You want to be a better photographer. You want to learn how to take better photos. And I think I've done about as much as I can with the audio education. As in, well, there are just some things that I can't explain with my, limited vocabulary. And I just find it easier to just show you things like what is chromatic aberration, or my 3 favorite compositions, or even Lightroom editing tricks. And for a while now, I've really wanted to dedicate some time to making educational content for YouTube to better help you so that, you can get that visual element. But I have found that it's incredibly hard to dedicate more time to the podcast than I already am, because while many of you may be surprised by this, unless a podcast is getting hundreds of thousands of downloads per episode, which the Beginner Photography Podcast is nowhere near that, podcasts make very, very little money. And I am not motivated by money at all. I am motivated by time. That's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to become a wedding photographer, for the amount of time that I would have to spend with my kids, to, take a day off and go see a Dodger game in Cincinnati, to drive up to Chicago and spend the day, doing a photo walk with some longtime listeners of the podcast who have become friends. So I value my time. And then a few weeks ago, I was interviewing Gavin Wade. You remember him. He is the founder and CEO of CloudSpot. And you know that I've been using CloudSpot for years to deliver my photos to clients. And I've honestly never experienced a company so dedicated to helping photographers, all photographers, than CloudSpot is. So Gavin and I were talking, and Gavin was saying all of the things that I was feeling. How can I help more photographers and not take more time away from family and life? So what did I do? I threw out this crazy idea. Crazy idea. How about CloudSpot becomes an official sponsor of the podcast? Not just in like this one-time, one-episode thing, but how about we both, the Beginner Photography Podcast and CloudSpot, combine forces to help and empower as many photographers as possible? Gavin got excited, I got excited, and we've made it happen. So officially, starting today, CloudSpot is now the official sponsor of the Beginner Photography Podcast. Why? because we have such similar views on the industry and helping other photographers achieve their goals. This will also allow me the time to start creating more content on YouTube for you to help answer more of your questions that require a visual element, a visual answer. Side note, I've already started posting videos, so next time you get on YouTube, go ahead and search and subscribe to the Beginner Photography Podcast's YouTube channel. And Gavin, wait for it, Gavin, being the kind and amazing person that he is, he wants to give away 1 full year of CloudSpot for free. Their top tier plan, not like their entry level plan, their top tier plan. This is going to help you level up your experience for your clients, which increases your value as a photographer. It will also allow you to sell prints at no commission to earn even more money with your photography, all with unlimited storage to back up your photos for a full year. Like, this is a value of over $400 that Gavin and the team over at CloudSpot want to give to you to make this happen, to show that they're dedicated to you as much as I am. You know, imagine what you could do, you know, when starting a photography business if you had just an extra $400. So if you want to win, all that you have to do is head over to deliverphotos.com and sign up for a free CloudSpot account by May 31st, 2022, and you will be entered to win. And good news, if you've previously signed up for a free CloudSpot account over at deliverphotos.com, then you're already entered. So 2 great things that we gave away. We gave away one of our popular photography courses, and we're giving away an entire year of CloudSpot to you just for being a part of the community. I value you, as listeners of the podcast. I really do. This is really exciting for me. So yeah, I think this is it for our 300th episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. We answered a ton of great questions today, and I hope that it helped make something click for you, or just gave you the enthusiasm, excitement to go out and shoot and try something new. So again, let me just say once more how truly grateful I am for each and every one of you, who tune in and listen and put whatever you learn into practice behind the camera. Because the knowledge that you gain on this podcast is great. It's great stuff. I use it. But unless you do something with it, it's all for nothing. So you have to learn, and then you have to do. That is what this podcast is for. So go out, take something that you learned today, put it into practice in your photography, and do. So get out, go shoot, because the more that you shoot today, the better of a photography. I screwed that up. The more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Again, thank you all for tuning in to this very special 300th episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. I love you all.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.